Welcome to the LDN radio show, brought to you by the LDN Research Trust. I'm your host, Linda Elsiegood. I have an exciting lineup of guest speakers who are LDN experts in their field. We will be discussing low-dose naltrexone and its many uses in autoimmune diseases, cancers, etc. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to welcome our guest today, Mieke from Canada, who takes LDN for the triad, EDS, POTS and MCAS. Thank you very much for joining us, Mieke.
Thanks so much for having me.
So we'd like to hear your story. When did you first notice there was something wrong with you?
Yeah, so, everything is easier in hindsight, but looking back, I can go as far as into my childhood. But when I turned about 24, I was a recent grad, and it was kind of like a bomb went off. Like everything in my life and my health took a really sharp decline. And the first thing for me was the MCAS symptoms. And I just knew something was super not right. It was pretty undeniable at that point.
What sort of symptoms were you having?
So for me, it was very much like the classic severe allergic reaction symptoms. So angioedema, really bad urticaria. My heart rate was, sitting in the 150s to 200 range. Bone pain, fatigue, every kind of organ system was kind of being affected. But I just started reacting to everything from my toothpaste to every food. And it was a pretty quick happening of this.
Mm-hmm. So before you found LDN, when you were at your worst, could you describe a typical day? What did that look like?
Yeah. At my worst, I had just started, I had opened a music studio at this time. So I was just trying to work and do my business. And it started to become really impossible with the swelling, the allergic reactions. I was starting to have to go to the ER all the time. The fatigue was so debilitating, but I think the inconsistency of not knowing when a reaction was going to happen, where it was coming from, what I could eat, it made a day pretty unmanageable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So can you go into describing from your feet working upwards as to what symptoms you had, what you had to live with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, if we're talking about even the feet, at this time, I didn't realize I had hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So it took a while to even piece together that, I was having frequent joint subluxations, dislocations. And then around this time too, I don't know, I feel like I really got a lot of the comorbidities and some of the strange comorbidities. My muscles started being super affected in this time. It wasn't until many years later that we figured out I was actually having lactic acidosis episodes and attacks at this point, probably multiple times a week. So that was extremely painful, a lot of burning and fatigue really throughout the body with that. The working up to the stomach, I'm laughing, but it's really not funny. But it's just when you say it, sometimes it sounds so obnoxious that so many things are affected, but it really is the case. Really, all these years later now, we're just actually in like present day sorting out a lot of these gastric issues. I've had some testing for moles that has recently come back in support of that. So we're looking into that, but really bad nausea. When I was in university, I had a very hard time. Just with everything with the digestive tract. I'll save you the details, but but yeah, the rashes, the swelling, that was very hard. And especially, I was a singing teacher. So, your voice and this area and a lack of inflammation, chronic sinus infections. We later figured out I had an immunodeficiency, was really, really trying with the brain fog too. It's just hard to function in that time.
What about headaches and sleeping?
Mhm. Sleeping has been an interesting road. At one point, we actually were suspicious that maybe I had narcolepsy. Thankfully, we ruled that out. But the reason we thought that was because there was a while where I just could not stay awake. I was almost having cataplexy type falls at one point. Um, and I had a lot of kind of, I think they call them kind of sleep events, sleepwalking in my past. But one of the main things that I really, up into when I tried low dose naltrexone, that I had no answers for were these chronic nightmares, really since I was born. And they're not associated with trauma or, anything in that realm, just these idiopathic, horrible nightmares. And it was unexpected because when I tried low dose naltrexone, we were trying it for some of the MCAS symptoms, the Ehlers-Danlos symptoms, and to my surprise, after being on LDN for a while, it almost eliminated these nightmares for me, which I was not expecting, but it was like the greatest gift. So I'm always wanting to kind of shout that from the rooftops because, it was so horrible to live with that. If there's anyone else experiencing that, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, what a gift.
Your nightmares, were they reoccurring, the same nightmares all the time, or were they random?
I think for me, mostly random. Yes. Maybe a few similar themes, but it almost just felt like I never slept almost. Like you'd go to sleep and you'd remember them so vividly, almost just like a movie playing. And you'd wake up and, you know, generally the content is not positive in nature. So it just really felt like, you just never wanted to go to sleep.
Mhm. So, how did you go about finding the right doctor to help you with all these symptoms? Who was the person that prescribed the LDN for you?
Mhm. It took, as many people with this know, quite an extensive journey and path to find the right people. I think especially maybe in Canada with specific to the MCAS, I think there might, at least in the time, especially when I was going through this process, I think there was even less access. The testing even is harder to, yeah, get access to here. Um, so for the LDN, I have a geneticist that I got hooked up with for the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, but he's so great and such a blessing to us all. He definitely treats like the triad, the whole picture of everything. He's who I found out about LDN from. And yeah, got me started on that when I really had never heard of it before and, the benefits. So,
Mhm. So when you started, did you start on an ultra low dose and work up slowly? Can you remember?
yes, yeah, it was a few years ago now, but I do remember, yeah, like titrating up the dose. Um, and I think being instructed, when I'm feeling like I found the right spot, I can stop there. And yeah, I feel like I definitely found that, and I've just stayed on it since. And I just talked to him not that long ago, and we were talking about it, and we were like, what's that saying? If it's not broke, don't fix it. That's how we feel about where I'm at with that.
So how long have you been taking it?
It's probably been about 2 to 3 years, I think. Yeah.
And in your quest to find the right people to help you, were you dismissed as that there wasn't anything wrong with you? It was in your mind? But what was
Yeah.
your experience of the doctors?
Yes. I feel very lucky now because, I'm in a place where I've got a good team, but, to get to that point was pretty brutal, honestly. There was lots of that. It's in your head. I had the first doctor I saw, when this all kind of got really bad at age 24, he said something along the lines even of, well, I don't believe in that. And I remember thinking, it's not Santa Claus, you can't just not believe in science and all that stuff. So pretty relentless advocating it took to get this place. And, I'm glad I got there, but yeah.
So when you started the LDN, did you notice any side effects initially?
It's a good question. I think one of the reasons I like the LDN, I'm very, very reactive, obviously, to a lot of drugs, anything on the planet, honestly. But if I'm really honestly trying to remember, I really don't remember anything, at least overt, in terms of bad side effects. So, and I honestly think there's only probably 3 or 4 drugs I can think of that's ever done that for me. So, truthfully, no, I don't think I had that.
And how long did it take before you noticed something was working for you?
It's a good question. I do have to jog my memory a bit, but at least to get it to that dose, maybe it probably maybe took a month and a bit, I'm guessing. But I always try to give it a little bit longer to make sure, it's not a fluke and, there's so many factors. But I think there was a while where you run out of a prescription or something. I took probably an accidental break from the LDN, and the nightmares have continuously just come back when I stop that. So I don't know if it's likely probably just a inflammation factor that's causing that, but yeah.
And what about your diet? What does that look like?
Diet has been ongoing for sure. At first, when this happened, it was really restricted just from the amount of reactions I was having. I think at one point I could only eat about 5 foods, which was sad. And then I slowly over the years, as I've gotten, mast cell stabilizers, Xolair has been like a really key drug for me as well. I've been able to increase that. I still can't really do any. I have to be really careful with processed things and dyes and kind of additives like that. Unfortunately, a lot of vegetables and fruits I'm allergic to, which can be a bit frustrating. I was vegetarian for really most of my life. But in this whole process, something really key I figured out was I had we're treating it now, but a really significant carnitine deficiency, which is very important for mitochondrial function, metabolic function. I was having, all these metabolic problems. And it was affecting my blood sugar a lot. So I do eat meat now, but even that would not be enough. I have to supplement a lot of carnitine. And to clarify, carnitine is found in animal products. So yeah.
So what is your life like today? What's a typical day now?
Yeah, I think the thing I keep telling myself now, day to day, is the goal is to try to get consistency and shrink the episodes of instability and attacks and ER trips. Excuse me. And with time, it's getting there. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to work since I was teaching, but Honestly, it's funny. I say I don't, work, but with all these appointments, all these treatments, all these tests, I have to be honest, it really feels like I do have a job. Most of the time, my week is really filled up with all that stuff, whether it's even just physio. Um, but I'm every time I can go longer without the hospital or something, that's a blessing. So
How often would you say you're going to the ER now?
right now, I I had a bad patch. I got married in October, which was lovely, but 2 weeks beforehand, I was septic with a kidney infection, which was, I guess, a great example of that unpredictability. So there was a while where it was in the last year, maybe every few months, if not month. Just because I was having so many infection problems. But I've been able to start IVIG, or, well, I'm doing that home version. I think they call it SCIG. So I'm starting to get some more control on that. So it's been a few months, which is good.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to other people who are following in your footsteps?
I would say, for advice, number one, believe in yourself, advocate for yourself. Unfortunately, there will be doctors who see you as a complex. There's a difference between a complex patient and a difficult patient. And it can be quite easier for busy doctors to, yeah, say you're anxious, it's in your head, but don't buy into that. If you know what you're feeling is real and physical, keep strong. Definitely protect your mental health too, because it is quite a trying journey. And the good news now, especially with the MCAS in particular, I remember maybe 2016, 2017, when I was looking for resources and trying to learn about it, I could find so little compared to now. There's so much good information out there from good sources. So I would say, don't be afraid to, look into things for yourself, but go to the right places. Go to these organizations, or even med articles, are like proper ones you can find. I'd recommend that.
Well, excellent. Thank you very much for sharing your experience with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm Dr. Leonard Weinstock, a guy who's been prescribing LDN since 2005, and I've seen the wonders. And I keep on seeing them, especially in hard to diagnose conditions. They're not that hard to do, but once you know about mast cell activation syndrome, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, you'll find that 17% of your friends or relatives have one or more of these conditions, and you can help them. We're making a documentary to wake up the medical community, to educate the population, but we need funding. So please fund whatever you can afford, no matter how little. www.mcasfund.com. That's mcasfund.com.
Any questions or comments you may have, please email me, Linda, Linda, at ldnrt.org. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciated your company. Until next time, stay safe and keep well.